Hello, if you are joining us early, you are at the second webinar in a series APHSA is hosting on tools and tips for quickly connecting families to the expanded child tax credit. We'll get started in just a minute. Welcome to those who have joined. This is part 2 of tools and tips for quickly connecting families to the expanded child tax credit. We're going to kick off in just a minute at the 10:30 mark. All right, as we are gearing up to kick this thing off at the 10:30 mark, just one quick thing for housekeeping. If anyone has questions during today's webinar, please just throw them in the chat and I will facilitate Q&A at the end. We will save a good amount of time for questions and answers with the panelists. And today's webinar is fairly fast. We're packing everything into just 30 minutes. So welcome. We're going to get started right now and kick it off with some great discussion on tools and tips for quickly connecting families to the expanded child tax credit. I'll just quickly set the stage for everyone in case folks don't know who APHSA is. We're the American Public Human Services Association. We represent state and local health and human services agencies through their top level leadership and through subject matter experts on the ground. We are joined here today by Jeff Price and Matt Fitzgerald from the Virginia Department of Social Services and Courtney O'Reilly from Code for America. And we will jump right in. I'll set the stage on why we're here talking about the child tax credit today. And then I'll turn it over to Courtney for an overview of Code for America's great tool, the Get CTC portal that families can use to sign up for the child tax credit if they have not already, anytime before November 15th. And then we'll dig in on a conversation with Virginia on what the Department of Social Services in their state is doing to connect families to the child tax credit. And then we'll, like I said, have plenty of time for Q&A. So again, if you weren't here when I announced it, if you have any questions throughout today's presentation, just throw them in the chat and we'll facilitate Q&A at the end. So just a very brief word for me before I turn it over to the panelists. You might already be aware that the American Rescue Plan expanded the child tax credit, increasing the total amount of the CTC for families, making it fully refundable, and removing minimum income requirements. So right now we're in a world where families who make incomes too low to require them to file taxes, so they typically don't file taxes, are eligible for an advanced payment of the child tax credit. And they might not be receiving it if the IRS doesn't have their information, because that's the way that the benefit is issued and dispersed to families through information on hand with the IRS. These monthly installments have been active from July and go through December. The filing deadline is November 15th. So families need to get their information in to begin receiving these advanced child tax credits, hence the sense of urgency with which we're sharing information out and making sure all families are aware that they are eligible for this credit. It can be used for anything from back to school supplies to putting food on the table, meeting families' needs. So I will turn it over now to Courtney to run through what Code for America's approach has been, and then we'll, like I said, dig in with Virginia Department of Social Services to see what their efforts on the ground have looked like so far. All right.
Thanks so much, Jess. Hi, everybody. Yeah, my name is Courtney O'Reilly. I'm the Navigator Program Manager with Code for America. Excited to be here with you today. And then if we just want to go to the next slide, I just want to give a quick overview of Code for America for those who aren't familiar with us. We're a civic tech nonprofit based in San Francisco, working to show that with the mindful use of technology, we can improve government in meaningful ways. We build digital services that enhance government capabilities through programs that strengthen the social safety net, promote economic justice through tax benefits, and shrink the criminal legal system and mobilize a national network. And next slide. So in conducting the research that brought us to tax benefits work, we learned that billions of dollars in tax benefits were left on the table each year by eligible low-income families. Of course, this is a huge missed opportunity to advance economic justice. And as a result, our North Star became closing the tax benefits participation gap. We began with a free tax preparation service called Get Your Refund that connects low to moderate income households to free filing services through the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, or VITA. And we have since built and released Get CTC due to the expanded child tax credit that Jess just called out. Get CTC is designed to help folks claim their advanced child tax credit payments and claim any missed stimulus payments through the simplified portal. This portal can be seen as a supplement to the IRS non-filer sign-up tool. And just based on our experience of working with clients missing these tax credits, we knew we needed to make Get CTC mobile friendly, available in English and Spanish. We also wanted to ensure that there was chat assistance available if someone gets stuck or has additional questions. We're excited that it's now able to stay open through November 15th. One thing to note is that the IRS non-filer tool will shut down on October 15th, at least as of this morning when I checked, just to make sure. And we also want to note that this tool was built in collaboration with the White House and the US Department of the Treasury. Another important ingredient in creating Get CTC was formatting the portal to be interview style with no more than 1 to 3 questions per page. And those questions help determine who qualify for which of these credits and ensure that this is the right tool for them. So there kind of isn't the guesswork of, do I actually qualify for this? Is this the right tool for me? We try to go through a triage of questions to make sure that they're eligible and that this is the right tool. Next slide. As of yesterday, we're excited to announce that that through Get CTC, 25,000 returns have been accepted and over 100 million in refunds claimed. But as Jess said, there's a lot more work to be done. And we know roughly 4 million children are not currently claimed for the child tax credit. And with statewide partnerships, we hope to close that gap. And next slide. With a little over a month to go, now is the time to push this resource to families. And the easiest way states can get involved is promoting this tool to their communities. The first recommendation we have is simply linking to Get CTC on your website. Next bullet. The next is to build awareness and trust through actively sharing information about the CTC and Get CTC through your various channels. And finally, whenever possible, we encourage state partners to engage employees or local community-based organizations in becoming CTC navigators that help just answer simple questions, build some awareness and trust around this, and help them access this tool. We know many of the families we're seeking to serve live in a digital divide. And so by having navigators, we're able to help better connect them to these resources. Slide. Just a few effective messaging best practices. One is, in order to find families in this gap, we need to cast a wide net. You want to work with as many partners as possible that might have been previously unengaged in tax work. We're working with partners that really have never considered themselves somebody to connect somebody to tax benefits. But we know by working with those partners, we're more likely to engage families that have been missed in these credits so far. It's also recommended, and I'm sure many of you can understand why, that you work with community orgs that are trusted within their communities to help spread this word. We know trust is a huge issue of why people have not been able to claim this credit. And we want to make sure that it's coming from them, that they are eligible to claim this, and here's how. The next is just determining the message that is appropriate for your audience. This is not a one size fits all campaign, and we know that states are more likely to create some messaging that makes it more localized, makes it feel like something that is meant for each of their constituents or community. Just some initial data that we've come across is that using cash benefits for kids as a way to introduce them has been more accepted than child tax credit. For years and decades, families have been told that they don't qualify for the child tax credit, and now all of a sudden they do. So by repeating child tax credit, they might just write that off and say, nope, that's not for me. So cash benefits for kids, something in that category that doesn't have anything to do with tax credits, is actually a good entry point in people being interested. We also encourage you to use language around sign up instead of learn more. People are tired of reading over and over again about this credit. They want to know what actions they need to take in order to sign up. There also is language referring to these payments going out to other families and asking if they've gotten theirs. So kind of making it a comparison. 65 million families have gotten this. Have you received your monthly payment? To make it something that makes it feel like this is something everybody else is getting. Why am I not getting it? We've also seen, as I mentioned before, some widespread confusion around key points that are blocking people from taking action. And most of that is around saying, I don't qualify for this. I'm on disability, I'm on Social Security, I've never qualified for these tax credits. So really emphasizing little to no income, even if you don't have to file all of these pieces to make it feel like it's actually something that these families can claim. Next slide. We also want to make sure that we're tracking this impact. And we have a really great way that we think will be helpful in doing so, and that's requesting a unique URL from GetCTC. There's a simple form that we use just to make sure that nobody else has claimed that unique URL, but you can request as many as you want to test various messages. So if you're posting on social media, if you're sending out a flyer to LEAP participants or SNAP benefit participants, we can give you different URLs so that we know exactly how many people then went to that website based on that, and if their return was actually accepted after the fact. This information is invaluable to us, and we hope to use this information to prepare other organizations for next tax season. So as much as I can emphasize, please request a unique URL while conducting this outreach. And then next slide. Also, just want to share a few available resources and just some additional best practices. So one, we encourage you to take advantage of existing toolkits. There are a number of outreach toolkits. I've linked to 2 on here that we think do a really kind of robust job of also providing toolkits or messaging in Spanish. So we're happy to send those up as a follow-up. We also have created a navigator page that has resources for those who are interested in helping their community get through these tools. And that's at getctc.org/navigators. And probably one of the biggest resource is the chat support on GetCTC. I think this is where we want to make sure that people don't feel like they have to be tax experts to engage in this work. We have IRS certified volunteers and staff who are here to help answer those questions. And that can come from the client directly or from you if you're helping somebody and just need a bit of additional assistance. Please use that chat icon at GetCTC. And then some just state best practices. And I'm so glad that we have our next guest talking about exactly how they're doing this, but want to just call out that targeting clients receiving other public benefits has been so far the most effective way of getting people to, of closing that gap and getting the highest rate of accepted returns. We also want to remind you to promote coalition building among partners, making sure that your partners understand that GetCTC is a tool that they can use, especially when the IRS non-filer tool shuts down in, a few days. And then one thing we've also seen is that whenever possible, pushing people directly to GetCTC. We understand that a lot of people want to push them to their own website, but we see just probably no surprise to anybody here that a lot of people fall off when they're sent to a site that doesn't let them commit to action right away. And so just with the unique URL where we can track things for you and help you understand that, but whenever possible, directing them directly to Get CTC. And next slide. Perfect. And just thank you so much for having me. I have my contact information there, and we encourage you to visit us at getctc.org/navigators. I'll turn it back to Jess to hand it over to our next speakers.
Thanks so much, Courtney. And I threw it in the chat, but I'll say it out loud too. We will share all of this information out in an email to everyone who registered. I know a lot of folks registered but couldn't make it live because they're on the West Coast. So if there's any West Coast folks with us, welcome. Thank you. And now we will I'll stop sharing my screen and we'll just have a conversation with Virginia. Jeff, I'm going to start with you. Can you give the audience just a little bit of an introduction to who you are and your role within the agency, and then share some of the historical context discussing the technical infrastructure VDSS already had in place that set you all up for success when it came time to jump in on CTC outreach?
Be happy to. Thank you, Jess. Very quickly, I'm Jeff Price. I'm the director of the Office of Research and Planning at the Virginia Department of Social Services. That includes a group of researchers and the data warehouse, who both kind of play a key role in our outreach efforts for earned income tax credit, CTC, and last year we also had an outreach initiative around the stimulus payments. A quick history or background on how we got to where we are now. About 15 years ago, the state of Virginia legislature passed a law that mandated the Department of Social Services to conduct outreach to SNAP, TANF, Medicaid clients for the purposes of notifying them about their potential eligibility for earned income tax credit. And my predecessor, before I even took the job years ago, had already developed a very elaborate process within the department to pull data automatically out of our case management system at the end of the year to first identify who all those people are who were in those programs during the calendar year, and then to look for some household information. Back then, recent changes to EITC emphasize or greatly enhanced the benefits to childless parents and single families as well. So, but in the past, the focus was really on families with children. And so we looked for household composition information, the evidence or presence of children in the household. We also screened for people in the right age group between 18 and 64 years of age. And then we would send all of those. So we had a data sharing agreement with the Virginia Employment Commission and also with the Virginia Department of Taxation because we needed data from those two organizations in order to kind of put the final pieces together to help us estimate who looked to be eligible for EITC. So we would send over Social Security numbers to the Virginia Employment Commission, and they would send us back information about earnings, reported earnings from the prior, for many quarters back. We would look at that to see, did the person have any reported earnings during the calendar year, because that was a criteria for eligibility. We would also send their socials over to the Department of Taxation to see if they had a history of filing. There's a little odd piece of the law in Virginia that said send notifications to people who look to be eligible and who did not file for a tax or did not file taxes and did not claim EITC last year. The assumption being that if they did it last year, you don't need to tell them about it again this year because they already know. We know that's not really true anymore. I think in the last 10 years, a couple of studies have been done to show that there is very little correlation in the pattern between filing one year and not filing the next year. And so we've gravitated towards just saying we need to just tell everybody and not necessarily screen them out. But there's some very good information that we do get back from the Department of Taxation, which tells us about their filing status, the number of dependents, their federal and their state adjusted gross income, if they're claiming exemptions, how many exemptions or what are their exemptions, do they have earned income, and a couple of other things that are very useful for trying to identify families that are really eligible. So we've had this kind of system in place for about as I said, about 10 years. We've had to change it a good bit over the years as our case management system changed about 6 years ago. So all of those processes that my predecessor had put in place, they kind of broke when we went to these new systems. And we've gone back to a little bit more manual, like we pull the data, my data warehouse guys will pull the data out of the case management system and do the same thing to identify people in that right age bracket, try to get some household composition. And so we've been set up to kind of do this outreach for CTC because we've been set up to do it for the EITC for many years. And so we're working on using those same kind of data sharing agreements that we have that allow us to do this for the purposes of outreach. And my colleague Matt's going to talk a little bit more about what the outreach, what that kind of looks like for CTC here in just a moment. I did want to tell you that we have done some studies actually to look at. So we used to send out a little card, like a little card stock thing that would have our message on it to folks, and we send a physical card to their home, their mailing address. And my predecessor did a randomized controlled trial in 2010 when they also, that 1 year, they also used some phone calling to see if was there a difference in the effectiveness of sending out a card to tell people about it versus calling them on the phone and telling them about it? And did either of those two things have a measurable effect in motivating people to file a tax return and claim EITC? He found a very small, about 1.5% increase in EITC uptake tied to the fact that we reached out and told people about it. It sounds like a very small measurable effect, but it turns out for a fairly large number of people and a huge benefit if you consider the share, like if they get $2,000 back in EITC, that can sometimes be 10% of their annual income. So it's a huge benefit. So a very small effect still is a really significant impact on a lot of families. So just last year, we did another randomized control trial looking at our outreach efforts for EITC and also for the EIP, the stimulus payment last year, using sending people messages by email and by text message. We've moved a long way. The technology has changed and the way people communicate has changed. So we wanted to see, are there differences in the effectiveness of either of these two methods of communication? And are there differences in the message itself? As Courtney was talking about, changing the language a little bit can have a big difference in people's perception of what it is you're talking to them about and whether you motivate them to take action. So we tried 2 or 3 different messages, a short message versus a longer message and some things like that. Dr. Dana Manoli at Georgetown University is doing the analysis for us on those 2 studies. He's not finished with that yet. I can give you a little spoiler alert. I can tell you that he has found significant measurable effects in uptake for EITC. We did run into some complications. If you remember last year when the pandemic happened, the lockdown happened, our VITA sites had to close down as well. And so right at the time when we were trying to tell people, if you need some help with your taxes and claiming EITC, go to Code for America or go to the VITA sites or go to the IRS site. Well, our VITA sites weren't available for it. So we lost a little of the impetus, a little of our measurable effect, I think, because the VITA sites were shut down. But it does look like there were measurable effects, significant measurable effects from our outreach efforts last year. And so we're doing kind of the same thing this year with CTC. We're taking the same kind of approach, but the logic is a little bit different. So we know we can identify people who filed taxes earlier this year for the 2020 count for our 2020 tax filing, which would have been in 2021. So we've already done that match with the Department of Taxation, and we know who, at least at the time when the match was run, we know who has already filed. And so we're not concerned about them because they're already in the system. They will get contacted automatically if they're eligible for CTC. We're really more interested in all those other people who we have no record of them having filed a 2020 tax return. So that's our target population. And we're looking for other pieces of information that tell us that there are children in the household either because of the type of TANF case that they're on, by definition is a child case. This year, we also were able to include data on people who are in the child support enforcement program, and we have records for those folks as well. So we've got a bigger population we can draw from, but we're using the same approach. If you didn't file a tax return and you've got we have some indication that you have children, you're eligible. Those are really the main two pieces that we're interested in. We've identified who those families are, and now we're ready to send messages out to them. And I'll stop there and I'll let Matt kind of pick it up from that point and tell you what else that we're doing with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. I was busy taking notes as you were talking because there's so many great things going on. So Matt, the last few months have been all about implementing these learnings from your RCTs and your historical work and trying to get folks to file for the CTC. Can you talk a little bit about the tools and outreach that you've relied on?
Sure. Thanks, Jess.
A quick introduction to who you are and your role with the agency as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the Community Service Program Manager, and the main program that I work in is Community Service Block Grant. So I work daily with community action agencies on anti-poverty programs. And one of the partners that we work with is Virginia Community Action Partnership, who basically oversees the program that does volunteer income tax assistance in the state. So have several different programs that we work on, but that's kind of the tie-in that we have within our office. And so like Jeff was describing some of the things we've done in the past, because we work each year with that entire network of the volunteer income tax assistance partners. And we target individuals that likely should receive earned income tax credit, but haven't filed to receive that credit. So we've utilized the same infrastructure that we use for those same activities to outreach around child tax credit this year in several different ways. One, our agency administers the 211 referral service in Virginia. So for that, that's where you can call 211 and get information on anything that you need in Virginia, especially around nonprofit services. So we created this decision tree document for our 211 call center operators to use in answering questions around credits in general, tax preparation in general, but specifically around child tax credit. And basically that information was like a script for the call center operator to use in determining the best place to direct callers for assistance, whether that be get your CTC, could be get your refund for virtual tax preparation, could be an IRS site for location of the VITA site resources, the volunteer income tax assistance site resources, or it could be access to tools for individuals to complete their own tax return online, depending on what the need was of the individual. So that little tree was, something helpful to them to decide what resource they gave out. A second action we took was to utilize the DSS benefits portal, which in Virginia is called Common Help, to put out information specifically on child tax credit with links to specific resources that include Get Your CTC. So Common Help is the place where DSS clients, Department of Social Services clients, would go to find out about eligibility, but also to get updates on things that are important throughout the year. So this is a tool that we had this kind of information this year, but this is something we plan to build out and use more proactively going forward for all of our outreach around earned income tax credit, child tax credit, volunteer income tax assistance. We've also revised all the sections of our website that had been in the past primarily for EITC information. We did have information on child tax credit, but we had a lot on EITC. So we updated all the information on the site for child tax credit, all the things Jess talked about at the beginning around the changes that have happened since the American Rescue Plan and the additional credits that are available and the advanced child tax credit, all that kind of information. And then we worked with several state agencies and the governor's office actually to send out social media blasts around child tax credit. So one thing in all that work that we've tried to be cognizant of is that there's sometimes reasons people haven't filed or accessed what they should. So we try to give out as much information as possible with as much targeting as possible without steering someone in the wrong direction entirely, because we don't want to end up with someone trying to or filing a return that shouldn't also. So currently, Jeff was referring to the work we've done around EITC. So currently we're using the database, the same database that we use for that has all of our client information in, to send out information to that client list around targeted communications, emails or texts based on additional tax filing information, like whether they should have a filing requirement and whether they did file. And all, again, those conversations Jess had at the beginning about whether they had that filing requirement and whether that means we should promote Get Your CTC if we think they don't have a filing requirement, or if we think they do have one and just haven't filed yet, then it might be some information on get your CTC, but also get your refund or free tax preparation sites, things like that. So we make sure they have enough information to make the right choice. And then we've also organized several internal conversations within DSS to talk to other departments. So we've had local DSSs, our local departments of social services, our Department of Child Support Enforcement, our family services, all those, to make sure they understand what is going on in the tax credit world so they can inform their clients when they work with them. So making sure that outreach can be done in that way. And then working, Courtney mentioned earlier, we had a training recently with Code for America on identifying community partners that could serve as navigators to make sure they're sharing information with their direct clients and helping when possible, if they have the ability and can do it, to help literally with the completion of information and Get Your CTC. So all those different activities have occurred over since about June. We've done many of those things, with some of them still occurring currently. We're trying to send out additional communications now with the November 15th expanded deadline.
Wow, you are doing so much. We did have a question in the chat around the decision tree script you mentioned for the 211 call, Matt. Is that something that is shareable? Or is that more of an internal resource?
I don't see why not, because basically all it was like the thought process behind why you would recommend something. So I think it would be relevant to other folks. So yeah, we'd be happy to share it.
All right, so Deborah, I will include that in our follow-up. I'm also going to share all the resources that Courtney mentioned earlier and the recording out to everyone. Like I said before, this is an early meeting time for our West Coast folks. So part of the reason we are doing this and recording it is so that we could share it out later. If you have additional questions, feel free to send me an email. And I just want to thank our speakers so much for coming here today and sharing all of the great resources and all of the efforts that you've been doing on the ground. Matt and Jeff, it's a pleasure. Courtney, thank you so much. And one quick plug, we're probably going to have one additional webinar highlighting additional tools and resources next Friday. And then APHSA is going to host a Twitter chat the following Friday on October 29th. So we're trying to amass all of the resources everyone's doing and really make sure they're getting out and into the right hands so that they can make the best impact possible in the next, now we're under a month. So thank you everyone who was able to join. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Courtney. Bye.